Hello guys, my name is Gavin, and this will be part 4 on how to make an FPS game in Blender. And in this video right here, we're going to be making a simple enemy. It will be one enemy type, and the enemy will respawn. And we're going to make a game timer. And actually, there's a couple things I'm going to add to this, which is we're actually going to add bullet damage. So bullet damage like this, and we're also going to add a crosshair in the middle of our screen. Because those are two things I forgot to do in the last video. Okay, I'm just going to get started. So open up your Blender file, and let's start off in the HUD scene like this. So in the same scene that we've got in our now newly made weapon animation like this, and our weapon guns. I set the ammo text game property to 400 since I felt like that would be nice just to have for now. And what we're going to do is on our camera, so right click on your camera in your HUD scene, do object snap and then cursor to selected. And let's do spacebar and then add a torus like this. For our torus object, let's do R, X, and 90 to rotate it 90 degrees on the X-axis. Drag this out. Hit 0 to go into our front view, or 0 to go into our camera view, and hit the S key to scale it down. So we now have a circle in the middle of our screen, and this will be kind of how we can aim with this. Okay. I'm actually going to apply a color to this torus in the middle. It will just be red, just to make it easy to see. We can see we've now got a red thing in the middle. If you actually want to add, like, some extra prongs and stuff, I won't do that for this video, but for now our crosshair will just be a circle. Okay, what we are now going to do is go back into our main scene like this, and let's right click on the camera. And in our camera in the main scene, let's do object, snap, and then cursor to selected. Now what we're going to do, and this is what makes this really, this is a very confusing aspect for people who aren't familiar with the game engine, is raycasting to use as bullet damage. So essentially there's going to be an invisible line that travels from an object positioned right in front of our camera to the enemy object, and it's going to apply damage like that. So with our camera like this, so right click and then do object snap cursor to selected. Let's do spacebar and then add a cube like this. And hit the S key to scale this down. Scale this cube down, drag it in the middle of our camera like this on the positive Y axis, and then hit shift and right click on your camera and hit Control and P to copy it, or to parent it to it. Now this cube object, I'm going to rename it as ray object. And so what's going to happen is whenever we press the fire button in the HUD scene, we're going to send a message to this ray object, and it's going to apply damage to our enemies that we're shooting at. So let's do an add sensor, and then always, like this, click these first three dots on our ray object. And let's do a message sensor, not a mouse, sorry, a message sensor. And we'll do, we'll call this shot fired. That will be the name of our message sensor. Alright, and for the subject, let's put shot fired. Minimize this, and let's add a controller in Python right here and connect it. And the last thing we're going to do is add a ray sensor. I'll name this as ray lowercase. And for the property, let's put enemy. And for the range, let's put 100 and keep it on the positive Y-axis. Minimize that sensor, and let's connect it to our Python controller like this. Let's now create a script for our ray object by doing templates, Python, and then game logic simple. Just like always, delete the portion that I've highlighted. And I'll call this ray script. So that'll be the new name of our script right here. Let's add that right here. Define our shot fired in our ray like this. So shots fired is going to equal const.sensors shots fired. And then ray is going to equal const.sensors ray like this. What we're now going to do is have if ray.positive, we're going to have the name target is going to be equal to whatever object it's hitting. So target is going to equal ray.hitObject. What we are now going to do is have if shot fired.positive. So if we are currently tracking to it, so if we currently have a target in our sights and a shot is fired, what we're going to do is have target health is going to minus equal 25. So, well, then that's kind of how this is going to work. This is all we're going to do for this ray sensor. Okay? So, and the reason why this is going to work is that if I hit P to play, you can see that cube object, or the ray sensor object, is in front of our player, like this. So it's always going to be there no matter what. Okay. What we now want to do is actually have an enemy that we can shoot at. So let's do spacebar and then add a cube. This cube object, I'll drag over here, will be the most generic enemy in history and be red. I'm going to rename this object as enemy. And let's make its physics character physics. So make it character physics like this. And let's add a new color to it. And it will be red. And because, if you remember from our ray sensor, so I'm going to right click back on our ray object. For the ray to work, it needs to have the property enemy. So on our cube object, or our enemy, let's add an enemy property, enemy. But if you also remember, we're also taking health away from it as well. So let's add a game property that will be health as well. Health. And what we are going to do is set the health to 25. Now we are going to have a very simplistic enemy for now. So let's add an always sensor on our enemy, like this. And what we are going to do is have a Python controller for our enemy object. Let's create a new script by doing templates, Python, and then game logic simple. Delete the portion that I've highlighted. Let's rename this as enemy script.py and add this right here. And just to show that this is actually working, actually I'll set the health on our enemy to 100. Or how about 200? 200 will be good. Just to show that this is working, let's have if own health is less than or equal to 0. We're going to do own.endObject. And I think there's two parentheses after this like that. Alright? Now, there's one thing we're forgetting now, which is if we go back into our HUD scene, or actually go back into your main scene, and hit 0 to go into our camera view, and right-click on the ray object, it needs to be sent a message that the shot was actually fired to actually be able to kill an enemy. So if we go back onto our ammo script right here, and what we're going to do is on the one where it's like if left-click.positive when we have ammo remaining, let's actually do own.sendMessage shot fired. This message will be picked up by our ray object like this. So I'm going to right click on the enemy now and do I and then game and then show debug properties. And if we hit P now, I'm going to move over the object. If we click, we can see in the top left corner the health of the enemy went down to almost 0. And if I click a couple more times, it will go down to 0. So I'm going to shift and right click this enemy about 3 times. Hit 0 to go into our camera view and hit P. If we aim down our sights, we can see we can destroy all those cubes like this. Now, one thing we are missing is I'm actually going to right click on this array object and make it invisible, like this. So if we hit P now, we can see we can run around the map. And if I shoot this cube, it'll delete, shoot this one, it will delete, and shoot this one, it will delete. But what we want it to do now is have it so that these enemies will respawn at a certain point. So I'm going to right click on one of these enemies and do object, snap, and then cursor to selected. What we're going to do now is do spacebar and then add a empty object. Add empty like this, and let's put cube. And let's drag this cube up. I'm going to rename this as spawn point. Spawn point like this. What we are going to do now is inside of our enemy scripts, and let me get my enemy script back up, like this. We're going to take this line out, and what we're going to do is define the main scene. So scene is going to equal bg.logic. Gets current scene like this. And we're going to have it so that our enemy objects, once they die, will respawn at the player, or respawn at the spawn point with full health. So let's define the spawn point is going to be equal to scene.objects spawn point. So what we're going to do is have if own health is less than or equal to 0. We're going to have own.world position is going to equal spawn point.world position, and then own health is going to equal to 200. 200 like this. So hit 0 to go into our camera view. And let's do spacebar. Or not, well, I don't know why I said that. You can see every time an enemy dies, it will respawn at the spawn points above it. And this is how the spawn point system will work. I'm actually going to change the color of that crosshair since it's kind of become inefficient now. Yeah, we can see we can kill all these enemies. They'll just keep dropping. Okay. So, now that we have that, I'm actually going to delete 2 of these enemies. So right-click one enemy on the corner, hit X and delete. And right-click on the other enemy in the corner and hit X and delete. Let's have it so that on this enemy, we're going to have a collision sensor. A collision sensor like this. We'll call this collision all lowercase. Collision, I'll click tap. And with the property player, because if you remember, the player has the property player as well. Okay, I want to minimize this and connect it to our Python controller like this. Now, what we're going to do is on our enemy object, we're going to add an edit object actuator, change it to track to, and let's put the objects player in here as well. So player like this, and I'm going to minimize this and add a motion actuator. Let's put the motion as 0.1 and connect these both to the always sensor. Like that. Actually, I'll hit X on this one and just connect it like this. Okay, what we now want it to do is define our collision sensor within our Python script for our enemy object. So collision is going to equal count.sensors collision like this. And what we want to have it do is have if collision.positive, we are going to do own.sendMessage damage. And the reason why we're sending this message is that we want it to be picked up by the health bar so that it will take away damage. We are then going to do own.world position is going to equal spawn points.world position. Then we're going to set the health back to 200 on our object. So we should see that even if I drag this enemy if I drag my player over here and hit P, the enemy will still track, and if it collides, it will just respawn. Okay, now that we have this, let's go back into our HUD and hit 0 to go into our camera view and right-click on our health object. Let's add a message sensor, and this message sensor will be damaged like this, but the subject matter is damage, and click tap. Minimize this and connect it to our health script like this. Now, what we are going to do is go onto our health display variable like this, or health display script. And let's define the sensor damage is going to equal to const.sensors damage. And what we're going to do is have if damage.positive, own health is going to minus equal 5. And what we're going to do now is have if own health is less than or equal to 0. We're going to do bge.logic.restart game. So if we die, our game is just going to restart. Let's go back into our main scene like this, and I'm going to hit File and Save. Hit P now, and I'm going to let my player's health all the way get back down to 0. I'll actually stand under the objects to make it go a little bit faster. 65, 55. You can see we're almost dead. 40, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, 0. And we restarted the game. Okay. What we're now going to do is create a game timer. And by making this timer, we're going to have it so that when the time runs out, it'll just restart the game. Let's go back into our HUD scene. Now I'm going to right-click on one of these text objects and hit Shift and D to copy it and drag it off to one corner. On this timer object, I'm going to delete all this stuff. This will be our timer. delete everything on it, and rename this as timer like this. Let's now delete this portion, delete the property right here. And on our timer object, let's add a game property that will be timer. Call it timer like this. And what we're going to do is maybe make this game be something like 60 seconds for now. Let's add an always sensor. And click those first 3 dots. And add a Python controller like this. And connect it like this. Let's now create a timer script by doing templates, Python, and then game logic simple. And delete the portion that I've highlighted. Let's rename this script as timer.py and add this right here. Timer.py. Okay. What we're now going to do is have a variable time amount is going to equal to, let's say 60 minus own timer. Then let's have a variable time is going to be equal to rounded off time amounts, comma, to 1 decimal place. So it's going to round off our timer to just 1 decimal place. And what we're going to have is if own timer, if time is less than or equal to 0, let's do bge.logic.restart game like this. So if we were to hit P now, we can see, whoops, we need to actually display the text on this. Let's do own.text is going to be equal to timer, or like time like this, plus, and then time. So we should see, we now have a game timer. No, is my Python script not on it? No, there's probably just an error. Floats. Oh. Okay. Convert this to a string right here. So it's now a string, and this should work if I'm not mistaken. Nope, it's still probably going to give me the same answer. Okay. Oh, I know what's going on. Sorry about this. Take away the string right here. Then what we're going to have is total time is going to be equal to a string of time. So we're going to convert this time variable rounded off to a string, and then put total time as what we're going to put right there. So I hit P and play, and we can now see we've got like a minute left. So let's go back into our main scene and hit play. We can see we can play the game with the timer in the corner, and we can shoot these enemies, and we can kill a bunch of them. Alright. Alright, so that's the end of this video. If you've made it this far, you're only one video away from absolutely being on your way to making a good FPS game. And this last video will be, let's actually make a map in this last game. So, alright guys, you're one video away. Let's keep it up.